All right, so we are moving right along building the label art for our 3D soda can, and in this clip we're going to add the text. So we're going to go to the window menu again and choose 3D to open up the 3D panel, and of course go to the window again and choose properties to get the properties panel. We're going to go right in here in the 3D panel and choose label material, and then you're going to go to the properties panel to the diffuse property at the top, click on the menu and choose edit texture. So here we are back in our label art file where we've got the background gradient and then the abstract wave element. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my text tool here in the toolbar and click and set a text layer. Now I'm going to go ahead and type the name of my product. We're just going to call it Cosmic Cola. And you can see it's just using the font that whenever I last used. But I want to change this into a much thicker, bold font for the label art here. So I'm going to double click and highlight the text by just double clicking the text layer itself in the layers panel. Highlights all of the text. I'm going to go up here, and the font I'm going to use, actually it's called Antique Olive Nord. Very thick, cool, bold font. It's actually part of Adobe Typekit. So if you are a Creative Cloud subscriber, you can actually go to your type menu here and just choose Add Fonts from Typekit and go ahead and locate this font and sync it to your Creative Cloud. Once I've got the text set, I'm going to go ahead and start formatting it. So to format it, I of course need to have my character panel. So I'm going to go to the window menu and choose character. And of course, as I said, any bold font will do here. I like this font from Typekit because it has a cool look to it, but any really thick, bold font will do. You can also use a logo element. If you have a specific logo or branding that you want to use, here's where you would implement that instead of some text. So in this case, we are going to go with a text element. So let me format it a little bit more. So I'm going to double click the text layer here in the layers panel to go ahead and highlight the text. Now the first thing is I'm going to use in the character panel here is to scale the text up. So let's just use the scrubby slider. Just put your cursor over the icon next to the setting and just scale it up just like that. And I'm going to highlight now just the word cola and then scale that one down a little bit, again using the scrubby sliders. And then I'm going to nudge it up to close in the spacing of the leading by holding down the Option key on Mac, Alt on Windows, and then hit the up arrow just to kind of close in the space there. And then I'm going to put my cursor at the beginning of the word cola and then just hit the space bar a couple times just to nudge the word toward the end there. Now I'm going to go over here to the word cosmic and highlight the first letter, the letter K here, and again use my character panel just to increase the size of the letter quite a bit more than the other ones. But you'll see it's remaining on the baseline, and it looks a little odd because all the other ones are sitting level on the baseline as well. So I want to nudge it down the baseline so the O can actually fit inside this little cut of the K here. So I'm going to go into my character panel, and right down here is the baseline shift setting right down here. And again, I'm going to use the scrubby slider in this case and just click and drag this into the negative, and you'll see that the letter drops down below the baseline slightly. Now I'm going to put my cursor right between the K and the O here, and I'm just going to adjust the kerning just between these two characters by holding down the Option key and then hitting my left arrow, and it's just going to nudge it in a little bit more. This would be the Alt key and then the left arrow if you're on Windows. So there is my text formatted. So with the formatting done, now I need to dress it up to make it look more like a product name. First thing is the color itself. Now I don't want it to be black, of course, so I'm going to go ahead and use a bright red color that I've already got set up over here in my swatches panel. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that to add it to my foreground swatch. Now if I click on the swatch itself, here you can see the numbers that make up this bright red color that I'm using here. So with that set as my foreground color, I'm simply going to press Option Delete or Alt Backspace if you're on Windows, and that's going to go ahead and fill the text with that color. Now we're going to dress up the text with some layer styling. So in the layers panel here, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and bring the layers panel out so you can see. And I'm just going to move these panels down and out of the way for the moment. So here in my layers panel, with the text layer selected, you're going to go to the layer style menu here, and we're going to start by adding a bevel and emboss. So right in here, you're going to go to the bevel and emboss settings. Let's start by adding and making this an outer bevel. Chisel hard is we're going to set for the technique. Size is quite a bit larger than I want it to be. Let's drop that to about 7. And then the depth really just doesn't need to be quite that much. Let's drop that down to around 250. I'm going to add a few more layer styles to this text to make it a little bit more dramatic. Let's add a stroke element to it. And for this one, I'm going to set this to the inside, normal 100%, but I am going to change the color of this to black. So just click on the swatch here, choose a color, and then we'll go ahead and apply it there. The size, I'm going to leave that at 5, actually. Let's go ahead and leave that. There we go. So that is for the inner stroke element. Now I'm going to add another stroke element, and you'll see if you've got a plus sign next to a layer style, you can just click on that plus sign and add another instance of that style. So for this case, I'm going to add the second one, and I'm going to let's drop the size down to about 7. And I'm going to set this one on the outside. You notice on the other stroke, we have it set to the inside. But on this new one, we're going to set it to the outside. And I'm going to also set the stroke color to white. Now you can see the stroke, this white stroke, combined with the bevel and emboss, which incidentally is at 7 on the sides as well. So make sure that those are both set to 7, and you'll see that you've got a little bit more dimension with that text there. So that's bevel and 2 strokes applied. Let's add a couple more layer styling to this. Let's do a gradient overlay. And over here, we're going to set this to multiply. For the gradient type, click on the swatch here. Just use a standard black to white gradient, which is the third one over here. Opacity, let's drop that down to around 35. And you want to choose radial for the style of gradient. And then over here, you want to make sure that reverse is checked on, because if it's not, you're going to see the gradient. It's going to look like that, with the dark in the center and the outer elements in the bright area. So go ahead and check on reverse just to make sure that the bright area of the gradient is in the center there. Finally, just go down here to the scale setting and just max this out to 150%. Now, when you have your layer style panel open, you can actually click and drag and move the gradient around to get an interesting lighting effect anywhere on the image. I'm just going to position it right about there. And then finally, we're going to activate a drop shadow here. And as per usual, I'm going to go ahead and leave it set to multiply. The opacity at about, let's bump that up a little bit more at about 60%. And then I'm just going to manually position my shadow. You can actually click and drag on the image to manually position the shadow. And I'm going to increase the size a little bit to around 9 or 10, and I think that looks pretty good. So again, the shadow, we're keeping it multiply. Black set as the color, opacity at 60%, and all these other settings you can actually adjust just by doing it manually by clicking on the image and dragging it. So that looks really good. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK for now. So that's all the styling on our label, and let's zoom back out. All right, so now we've got the text formatted and dressed up with the layer styling. In the next clip, we're going to go ahead and change the orientation and position the text in relation to the 3D art itself.